The Mormons and Revoked Lodge Charters.
Welcome to the Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons, while drinking an old-fashioned. If you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button now. Platforms other than YouTube tend to block some of our content. Subscribe now to get up-to-date videos and shorts as they release. Now, enjoy this episode.
On this episode of Masonic Education Monday, we talk about Mormonism and Freemasons, but maybe about a story you're not aware of. In the spring of 1839, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints established a new settlement. The town was named Nauvoo. Nauvoo was the Mormon headquarters for 7 years, during which time the church flourished, and the settlement became one of the largest cities in Illinois. Hostility, suspicion and trouble increased in direct proportion to the community's growth and success, and the Mormons were forced to flee their homes during the winter and spring of 1846. What happened? Why were the Mormons pushed out? Were they pushed out by Freemasons? Fellow Freemasons? Now the rest of the story. Prior to Nauvoo, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often incorrectly referenced as the Mormon Church, had previously been legally established in Fayette, New York on April 6, 1830. Religious persecution led them to migrate to various places throughout what then constituted the United States. Arrival to Nauvoo. Members and the headquarters of the church relocated to Nauvoo in 1839. Joseph Smith named the place Nauvoo because it is a Hebrew term meaning beautiful. However, their years there turned the place into a beautiful little town. Petition to charter a lodge. Some had already been Freemasons for years before they had joined the church, including Hiram Smith, the patriarch of the church, Eber Kimball, Newell Whitney, John Bennett, Lucius Scoville, Noah Rogers and James Adams. In 1841, these Masons sent a petition to the Grand Lodge of the Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of Illinois for a charter for a lodge in Nauvoo. In the summer of 1841, Illinois Grand Master Abraham Jonas granted dispensation to establish Nauvoo Lodge. A special dispensation is a temporary charter. This allowed these Masons to meet, though more as a club than a lodge. They were not permitted to confer degrees or initiate any members until a new dispensation was issued, making them a real lodge. Installation of officers. On the 15th of March 1842 at 9 a.m., the lodge opened for a special meeting for the purpose of installing its officers. Grand Master Jonas presided over the meeting. W. D. McCann, Deputy Grand Secretary, was also in attendance. Everyone gathered into Joseph Smith's office above his red brick store. Grand Master Jonas opened this event. Joseph Smith, Jr., who was not yet a Freemason, as allowed by the Constitution of the Grand Lodge, served in a pro tempore capacity as the Grand Chaplain for this event. After the original meeting, the lodge reopened after refreshment at 7 p.m. This time for the purpose of initiating Joseph Smith, Jr. and Sidney Rigdon as entered apprentices. Grand Master Jonas presented a special dispensation in the case of Joseph and Sidney, authorizing the lodge to confer the 3 several degrees of ancient York Masonry on the said Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon, as speedily as the nature of the case will admit. In other words, Joseph and Sidney could go through all 3 degrees within a short time span, the equivalent of a Grand Master's class today. Irregular work and exponential growth. The dispensation that Grand Master Jonas had written for Joseph and for Sidney was specific only to them. It did not apply to other petitioners or candidates. However, the Nauvoo Lodge operated from then on as if allowed by the regulations of the Grand Lodge. They initiated, passed and raised 6 new members, including Brigham Young, all in a 7-day period. Although this did not seem like a lot, it was about to explode. Masons of Nauvoo Lodge soon easily outnumbered the rest of the Masons in all of Illinois. Suspension and reinstatement of Nauvoo Lodge's dispensation. Other lodges started to notice the rapid growth of membership. Masons at Bodley Lodge No. 1, located in Quincy, Illinois, issued several charges against Nauvoo Lodge, claiming that their work was irregular or illegitimate. This led to Nauvoo Lodge's dispensation being suspended on August 11, 1842, starting at which time the Masons in Nauvoo were prohibited to cease meeting, working as a lodge. These irregularities and this suspension were then reported at the Grand Lodge's annual communication on October 4, 1842. Past Grand Master Jonas, whose successor, Meredith Helm, had already been installed as the Grand Master at this time, offered a substitute to these resolutions, that a special committee be appointed and sent immediately to Nauvoo to look into any irregularities and misconduct. This substitute resolution passed. The committee, composed of several past Grand Masters, reported to the Grand Master that they found the principal charges of irregularity groundless. They did find minor irregularities, which were balloting on more than one applicant petitioner at a time, receiving an applicant petitioner of dubious character on the promise of reformation and restitution. The committee recommended the following: a course of mercy and allowance for Nauvoo Lodge to continue meeting and working as Masons, and that the Grand Lodge appoint someone to attend Nauvoo Lodge for some given time to make sure that they avoid any such irregularities. Grand Master Helm then ordered the reinstatement of Nauvoo Lodge's dispensation and that they be empowered and authorized to meet and work as a lodge. Nauvoo Lodge started meeting again on the 10th of November of that year. Continued irregularities, exponential growth, and revocation of dispensation. Unfortunately, Nauvoo Lodge did not learn its lesson. It continued to initiate, pass, and raise large sums of people in small timeframes. Eventually, the number of Masons in Nauvoo exceeded 1,500, which made up about half of the Masonic population of the U.S. Grand Master Helm therefore again sent someone to Nauvoo Lodge in 1843, this time to collect and suspend their dispensation again. It was reported at the annual communication that a Grand Lodge representative was met with contempt, and Nauvoo Lodge refused to relinquish their dispensation. Grand Lodge resolution passed at the annual communication to revoke Nauvoo Lodge's dispensation, to deny its request for a charter. Nauvoo's disregard of suspension and dedication of Masonic Hall. On November 2, 1843, Nauvoo Lodge held a meeting to discuss and vote if they should heed the suspension and quit meeting as a lodge. They voted to continue to meet and work as Masons. Hiram Smith, the worshipful master, suggested that they would appeal the issue to a higher authority, the Grand Lodge of the United States. No such organization has ever existed. Nauvoo Lodge continued to grow. Assassinations of the Prophet and Patriarch. On June 7, 1844, the Nauvoo Expositor newspaper criticized Joseph Smith for teaching principles concerning plural marriage and exaltation. As mayor, Joseph Smith summoned the city marshal and had the marshal destroy the expositor. Reports of mobs gathering to attack Nauvoo as vengeance for the destruction of the expositor began to pour in. People started to call for Joseph's arrest, and on June 25, he surrendered himself and was arrested. Joseph and his brother Hiram, who had also been arrested, were taken to Carthage, Missouri. 2 days later, an assignation mob stormed the jail in Carthage. Hiram was shot first, exclaiming, "I am a dead man." Joseph was hit and fell out of a window. Representation of the attack on Carthage jail. Taylor was under the belief that there were Masons present in the mob. Grand Lodge's declaration of Nauvoo's clandestine status. On October 10, 1844, it was reported that Nauvoo Lodge would continue to operate, even without the consent of the Grand Lodge of Illinois. The Grand Lodge declared them clandestine, and all the members hailing therefrom, suspended from all the privileges of Masonry. Exception made for some Nauvoo Masons. At the October 1846 annual communication, resolution was adopted that the suspension of a subordinate lodge would only affect the individual standing of a member insofar as such edicts had come to their knowledge. Conclusion. It seems that most lodges discouraged any intervisitation with the Mormon lodges, which could very well have been a huge factor in these lodges not doing their local Masonic work within the regulations of the Grand Lodge. These new lodges were mostly Masons who were not new to Masonry and the regulations. Joseph Smith Jr. and Hiram Smith were under suspension at the time of their deaths. They were not clandestine Masons, as the decree of clandestine status occurred months after their deaths. As for Joseph, there is a chance that he could have been granted a status of good standing had he survived. Why? Because he is not recorded as present at the November 1843 meeting where the lodge was informed to cease meeting and working as Masons. This could allow Joseph the smallest possibility of obtaining individual reinstatement to a status of good standing. Is it probable? Is it possible? What did you think of this Masonic Education Monday piece? Don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe. Thanks you following the Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where Real's Masons talk about Freemasonry.